The strangest part about a life-changing decision is that it almost never feels life-changing when you're making it. It usually feels inconvenient, expensive, uncomfortable. Sometimes it even feels irresponsible. Only years later does it begin to look obvious. That's why successful lives can be so misleading. Looking backward, the path seems almost perfectly connected. Looking forward, it was anything but. So, why do so many of us keep waiting until we're sure? Waiting until the timing is right? Waiting until we know enough? Waiting until we can finally see how everything will work out? What if certainty isn't the beginning of the story? What if certainty is something we recognize only in hindsight? Chef Curtis Stone almost became a lawyer. His father worked in finance and wanted him to choose the sensible path. Curtis had the grades. He'd been accepted into law school. From the outside, it looked like the obvious decision. His father even tried appealing to the ego of an 18-year-old. Successful professionals, he joked, marry beautiful women. Chefs don't. It's funny now, but underneath the joke was something almost every family understands: the desire to protect someone from uncertainty. That's usually what practical advice is trying to do, not discourage a dream. Protect a person from disappointment. The problem is, some disappointments only exist because someone never tried. Curtis ignored the advice, not because he knew cooking would work, because something kept pulling him toward it. There's a difference. One choice follows certainty, the other follows curiosity. Most lives are built on one of those. Following curiosity doesn't make the road easier. 6 months into his apprenticeship, Curtis wondered if his father had been right. The work was repetitive, peeling onions, doing jobs nobody noticed, starting before everyone else, finishing after everyone else. He even enrolled in a business course because he thought he might have made the wrong decision. Then something changed. Not the profession, the environment. He moved to another kitchen, a different chef, someone who expected more from him and taught him more. Suddenly, the same career felt completely different. The dream hadn't changed, the environment had. The right environment doesn't always make something easier. Sometimes it simply reminds you why you wanted it in the first place. A few years later, another decision arrived. This one looked even less sensible. Curtis packed a bag, left Australia, and moved to London with almost no money. No carefully constructed 5-year plan, no guarantee of a job, no certainty waiting for him on the other side of the world. Years later, he would look back and ask himself, what were the chances? That's hindsight talking. Hindsight edits fear out of the story. It quietly removes all the moments where turning back would have made perfect sense. The version we remember is rarely the version people actually lived. London gave him another choice. He wanted to work for renowned British chef Marco Pierre White. There was one problem, though. Marco Pierre White didn't know who he was. So Curtis did something that would probably make most people uncomfortable. He walked into the restaurant without an appointment. No introduction, no connection, just a willingness to hear the word no. Oddly enough, that's the part many people spend the most energy avoiding. Not failure, rejection. So they polish, research, prepare, wait for a better moment. Eventually, preparation becomes so sophisticated that it disguises itself as progress. Nothing feels neglected except movement. Curtis got the job, not because he had certainty, because he created a moment that certainty never could. He would spend years working for Marco. The kitchens were demanding. Perfection wasn't optional. Approval had to be earned. Curtis has said the hardest part wasn't the criticism. It was wanting Marco's respect. That reframes everything that follows. When someone cares deeply about becoming better, correction stops feeling like an attack. It starts feeling like information. That's uncomfortable. But uncomfortable and harmful aren't always the same thing. Some of the most important people in life don't make us feel comfortable. They make us capable. Those years weren't glamorous. Curtis slept on someone's couch for 6 months because he couldn't afford his own place. It's one of those details people skip when they tell stories about success. Nobody posts the couch. Nobody celebrates 6 months of borrowed floor space. Nobody dreams about eating the cheapest meal they can find while they're crashing on someone else's couch. Success stories have a strange editing habit. They preserve the destination. They delete the waiting room, which creates another illusion that successful people somehow skip the ordinary struggles everyone else faces. They didn't. They just kept walking while it was happening. Here's something that's easy to miss. The decision that changes your life rarely announces itself. It usually arrives disguised as something much smaller. While working as head chef at one of Marco Pierre White's restaurants, Curtis was featured in a book celebrating London's leading chefs. To promote the book, each chef was invited to make a television appearance. Curtis said yes. That's all it was. One appearance, not a career move, not a grand strategy, just the next opportunity. Producers liked him. They invited him back. Then another opportunity appeared. Eventually, he was offered his own television show. Looking backward, it feels inevitable. Looking forward, it probably felt like saying yes one more time. That's the strange thing about opportunity. The one that changes everything almost never introduces itself that way. It simply asks whether you're willing to take the next step before you know where the path ends. Curtis often says, if you believe in it, it'll happen. Some people hear that and think he's talking about positive thinking. His life tells a different story. Belief wasn't wishing. Belief bought the plane ticket. Belief walked into the restaurant. Belief accepted sleeping on a couch. Belief agreed to a television appearance that looked ordinary at the time. Action gave belief somewhere to live. Without action, belief never leaves the imagination. Something else shows up again and again in Curtis's story. He doesn't believe talent is something you're simply born with. He watched Marco Pierre White outwork everyone around him. He saw what relentless effort could become over time. That challenges a comforting excuse. Sometimes it's easier to admire someone else's talent than question our own consistency. Talent creates distance. Work creates possibility. One says they're different. The other quietly asks, what if they're just further down the road? That's a much less comfortable question. It's also a much more useful one. There's another illusion hiding underneath all of this, the illusion of safety. People stay in jobs because they feel secure. They delay the move because it feels responsible. They wait another year because certainty feels just a little closer than it did yesterday. But certainty has a habit of moving. The future doesn't stop being uncertain simply because a decision looks safer. Companies close. Industries disappear. Health changes. Relationships change. Life keeps changing whether permission was given or not. Which means the choice isn't between certainty and uncertainty. It's between certainty that's chosen and uncertainty that's chosen for us. The future has one enormous advantage over the present. It always gets to look obvious afterward. That's why biographies are dangerous. They quietly convince people that successful lives followed a map. Most didn't. They followed one conversation, then another, one introduction, one unexpected opportunity, one decision that made the next decision visible. None of those later steps could have been seen from the beginning. They only existed because someone kept moving. That might be the hardest part to accept. The version of life that's waiting next can't introduce itself until this version has been lived first. The conversation that changes everything often depends on the phone call that almost wasn't made. The opportunity depends on the application that almost stayed in drafts. The friendship depends on walking into the room that almost felt too intimidating. Every future has prerequisites. Most of them are invisible until they're behind us. Perhaps that's why so many people spend years waiting for clarity, when clarity has been waiting for movement. Not because movement guarantees success, because movement reveals possibilities that standing still never can. Curtis Stone's story isn't really about becoming a world-famous chef. It's about something much closer to home. Every meaningful life eventually reaches a point where the map runs out. And from there, nobody knows. Not the entrepreneur, not the artist, not the parent, not the chef. The only real difference is who decides to keep walking anyway. If you'd like to keep exploring conversations like these, every week inside my school community, we take one personal development idea and actually live with it for a week. We compare notes, discover what worked, what surprised us, and what none of us would have seen on our own. You'll find the link to join us in the video description. And before you go, please share this video with someone who's been having the same conversation with themselves. I'll see you in the next one.